Okay, let's do this. Around 2 years ago, I made a video called Why You Should Build Your D&D Character Wrong. This has made a lot of people very angry and been widely regarded as a bad move. I made that video because I was annoyed at people telling me that I built my character Aisling wrong. What I didn't realize at the time was that by making this video, I was unknowingly entering a battle that the D&D community had been waging for many years. Well, I've learned my lesson and I've changed my mind, so today I am asking that you join me while I roast my past self. If you haven't seen the video in question, I will put it into the cards for you, but the short version is that I was trying to convince people, particularly people who usually optimize their character builds, to consider intentionally building a weakness into a character, like picking suboptimal spells, choosing attribute scores based on character instead of class, or choosing multi-classes that don't necessarily complement each other. I had reasoning for this, and we will get to why that reasoning was not great, but first, I want to explain the context for this video. The first thing to understand is that I was pretty new to D&D. I originally started playing D&D in 2019 after falling in love with Critical Role. When I made that video, I'd been playing for about a year in just one group, and I hadn't done much DMing yet. This obviously colored my perspective. The other thing to keep in mind is that people genuinely were really shitty to me about Aisling. Even though I said over and over that I was happy with her and that the other players at my table were happy with her, people just could not stop themselves from telling me that I was having fun with my friends incorrectly. And I'm not gonna lie, it made me mad and I got defensive. But the lesson I took away from that experience and the message of that video, that's where I screwed up. I watched my own video back to figure out all the stuff that I messed up, so let's go down the list. That's right, I want you to play a character who isn't optimized. I know, I can hear the old guard screaming. I made this joke because I was envisioning my generation of players, you know, the blue hair and pronouns crew, the Critical Role generation, whatever you want to call us, as the new guard. But as I've learned more about the history of D&D, I've learned that the true old school players, the people who played basic D&D and AD&D, have a reputation for prioritizing roleplay and storytelling, while it's the new school of D&D, that is 3.0 and onwards, that has trended towards optimization. Basically, I was lumping everyone who came before me into one group and showing my ass by admitting that I didn't understand the history of what, for me, was a new hobby. I am suggesting that it is okay and even good to try creating a character who has complexity and doesn't look like every other D&D character that anyone ever makes. Okay, I have no excuse for this. This is just shitty. I'm basically saying that if you optimize, your characters aren't unique, and that is both rude and completely false. It is very silly to suggest that not being able to create a character that is both unique and effective somehow makes you more creative rather than less. I, of all people, shouldn't be out here acting like it's the race-class combo that defines how unusual a character is. A truly inventive player would have no problem designing 10 half-orc barbarians that have different personalities and different backstories. I mean, I'm the one out here creating nothing but elves and tieflings, so who am I to throw shade? Weaknesses leave room for growth. I have said this before, lots of people have, but a character having flaws and weaknesses can be one of the most compelling parts of a story. It gives the character something to overcome and somewhere to grow. I'm missing a really obvious thing here, which is that optimized characters do have weaknesses. That's why so many wizards are easy to hit and why so many strength-based characters have low intelligence or charisma. Weaknesses are literally built into the game, because if you were good at everything, that would be really boring. Not to mention that there are plenty of weaknesses that you can write into a character's personality without necessarily baking it into their build. Your PC can be selfish or cowardly or naive. You absolutely do not have to intentionally build your character ineffectively in order to create flawed characters. Some of the right choices might not line up with your character's backstory or personality. This is actually me perpetuating another really common amateur mistake in the D&D community, and that is prioritizing the flavor of your mechanical choices over the actual impact on gameplay. For example, just because you want your character to play music doesn't mean that they have to be a bard. If you want to play a super intelligent singer who spent their youth doing rigorous magical vocal training, who carries a spellbook full of sheet music, a wizard would suit your concept better than a bard. Learning to look past the flavor and see each class, ability, and spell for what it actually does in the game is a really useful skill that inevitably leads to better builds that are more closely aligned with what the player actually wants. What's the point of being given choices if some of them are wrong? If it's not against the rules, it's not wrong. Period. Okay, I get what I was going for here, but the implication of this statement is that if no choice can be wrong, every choice should be right, which kind of implies that every choice should be equal. And if that were true, what would be the point of having choices at all? We might as well just play pre-made characters. Of course, some choices are going to be smarter and more effective. And thankfully, D&D is really complex, so there isn't just one choice that's right and one choice that's wrong. Your character build choices interact with each other. It's not like optimizers are just copy-pasting one perfect character. Min-maxing is a complicated puzzle, and figuring out which choices play well with other choices is a crucial part of what makes strategy games fun at all. I am not telling you how to play. I don't like when people tell me how to play, so I would not want to do that to you. And yet, that's basically what I did. Nice. But that is not all. I left the biggest way that I screwed up for last, and this screw up is so widespread in the D&D community that it has its own name. After the break, the Stormwind Fallacy. Welcome back to Interpretive Dance, Interpreted. Up next, a beautiful piece called Sponsored by World Anvil. A strong start, her movement clearly communicates that World Anvil is a toolkit for writers, game masters, role players, and world builders to help them organize and document the details of their world. Beautifully executed, despite critics' accusations of the umbrella symbolism as contrived. Each of these precise movements obviously represents a different World Anvil feature: wiki-style articles, interactive nestable maps, timelines, stat blocks, and family trees. Truly an incredible and undeniable display of artistry. One can almost see the tabletop gaming session run through World Anvil. The built-in dice rollers, support for stat blocks and character sheets, and easy privacy tools so DMs can share some information while still keeping their secrets. The freedom of her body perfectly represents how you can try out World Anvil for free. And as she stands proud in the final moments of the dance, even the untrained eye can see that they can take 40% off any annual membership with the code Ginny. Spectacular. This has been another episode of Interpretive Dance, Interpreted, and what a privilege it has been to share this moment with you. Good night. The Stormwind Fallacy, also known as the role-player versus role-player fallacy, was created in 2006 by Tempest Stormwind, a user on the now-defunct Wizards of the Coast community forums. Stormwind was labeling and disputing an assumption that he and many other players had noticed in D&D discourse. His claim is as follows: just because one optimizes their characters mechanically does not mean that they cannot also roleplay, and vice versa. He goes into more detail in the post, specifically noting that since D&D both has rules and is a role-playing game, each player is doing some measure of optimization and some measure of role-playing, even though their priorities and interests in those areas might vary from player to player. Some people mentioned this fallacy in the comments of my video, and looking back, I absolutely see how I played into this common misunderstanding. I was drawing a direct line from a sub-optimized character build to better roleplay, when in fact, there is absolutely nothing about building your character wrong that makes roleplay easier or harder or affects the quality of the roleplay. Doing the things I suggested in that video is not wrong, but it's also not better. It's just a choice. By targeting that video towards players who like to min-max, I was reinforcing this irrational idea that optimization and roleplay are mutually exclusive. In short, I was wrong. So, what changed? We've established that less than 2 years ago, I was being loud and wrong. I mean, probably more recently too, but that's subjective. So what happened in that time to change my mind? Well, two things really. First, I spent more time in the tabletop community. The longer I've been playing D&D and talking about it online, the more people who watch and engage with my content, the wider the range of experiences I've gotten to hear about. More than anything, this has just affirmed one of my core beliefs about tabletop gaming. Every table is different. This is one of those phrases that gets parroted so much that it's practically lost its meaning, but I don't want to just pay lip service here. I want to actually talk about what this means. We're playing a game where even the rulebook tells you that you don't have to follow the rules. Hearing stories from other D&D players every day on social media has truly driven home how vast the differences between tables are. People will regularly comment on my videos describing a game so foreign to me that I almost can't believe we're playing the same game. My goal with my videos has always been to help as many people as I can to have more fun, more fulfilling games. And I know that my advice won't suit everyone, no matter how hard I try, and trust me, I try very, very hard. But even if I can't help everyone, I want to do my best to not hurt anyone. And by now, I've seen firsthand how frustrating it is for people who enjoy both role-playing and optimization to constantly be told that those things can't coexist. I can only imagine that those people feel just as frustrated as I did being told that I had built Aisling wrong, and for that, I am truly sorry. The second thing that helped me understand is just that I played in more games. Aisling was great for the table I was playing her at. At that table, combat was pretty loosey-goosey, many encounters were more focused on problem solving than on methodically shaving off hit points, and most importantly, the other characters at the table were also largely built by folks who were going, ooh, that spell sounds interesting. With the context I had for that video, I can see why I thought my suggestion was clever and thought-provoking. But since then, I have played in and DM'd a lot more games. One-shots and guest appearances, mini-campaigns, other long-term ongoing games, and this has shown me that suiting your build to your specific game is absolutely essential. It genuinely sucks to bring a story-focused character with weak combat skills to a one-shot that ends up being all combat. And it turns out playing a character who can really fuck shit up with a great axe is very, very satisfying. Looking back on that video now, I can see why people who play in a group that does a lot of optimization would hate my suggestions. Because a character like Aisling in a game like that would either hold everyone else back or get left in the dust. And likewise, bringing a highly optimized build to a casual, loose game like the one where I played Aisling would also cause trouble. It would make encounter balancing much harder for the DM, and it would likely result in the other players feeling overshadowed. Whether you want to min-max or not, whether you want to research your builds or just pick stuff that sounds cool out of the handbook, everybody at the table needs to be on the same page. I made the mistake of trying to advise people to align their builds with my goals, but the only people you should be aligning your character's goals with are the other players at your table. I know I have a reputation for being some blue-haired, woke millennial snowflake who wants everybody to have a happy little friendship circle and always think about each other's feelings, and that is not true. My hair is clearly green now. But yes, I think D&D should be fun. And yes, I think everyone should do their best to be empathetic and understanding of their fellow players. And yes, Reddit, I have bubbly preschool teacher energy and I'm not ashamed of it. But in this specific case, I just want to set the record straight. I don't think optimization is bad. I don't think roleplay and optimization are mutually exclusive. And it turns out, in hindsight, I don't think anybody should change their way of playing to build their character wrong. That was a stupid thing to say. So here's my attempt to balance the scales. If you watched that first video and found yourself nodding along and saying, wow, Ginny is so right, if you take pride in ignoring or even rejecting optimization, then I hope this video has challenged you. I hope it's shown you that there is nothing stopping you from optimizing and building a complex character. And if you're interested in exploring a side of gameplay that you haven't dug into yet, then I hope you try something new. Or don't, because it's your game. And if you're already having a good time, then who am I to ask you to change it? The thing about spewing D&D thoughts for 10 to 15 minutes every week for literal years is that sometimes you will say something that you later change your mind about. I'm sure there's plenty I've said on this channel that I don't stand by anymore, and I think that's good. I don't want to be the kind of person who doesn't change my mind when I learn new things. So thanks for hearing me out, and next week, back to spewing D&D thoughts that I might later regret. By the way, I got to act in a web series called Headless alongside Matt Mercer, among other amazing cast members, and the trailer just released on Monday. So go check it out here and keep your eyes peeled for my spooky ass as Verla Wolfson.